Video from my March 2016 Deco trip with Ocean Research Group to Santa Barbara Island, Osborne Bank, and Catalina Island. Our first stop was a shakedown dive at Underwater Arch at Santa Barbara Island. It was about 60-70 feet. The viz was okay, maybe 20 or 30 feet. We managed to find the arch, which was pretty cool, and there was a decent amount of life. We saw sculpin, lobster about the size of our thigh, and this, probably the most interesting scene of the weekend of diving. There you can see a diver jaw line onto another diver who has a scooter and is towing him along like a horse and buggy. That was pretty funny. I've threatened friends to do this to them. Here's proof it can be done. The second site we hit was Black Cavern, or Black Caves. It's a huge swim through that's so big that you can't actually see light on the other side when you first enter the cavern. You swim through, you swim up an embankment, and then you can see this faint glow of blue on the other side. Here's the entrance of the cavern. You can see just how big it is, and here's the blue about halfway through. It's a really cool swim through, biggest one I've ever been in. But at the end, one of my divers signaled that there was something wrong. And in fact, I had a hole in my rebreather loop. Thankfully, because the rebreather is the ambient pressure of the water, it didn't leak all that much. There was actually no water ingress, and the gas loss was minimal. I was able to go back to the boat, put some aqua seal on the tear, cover it with yellow electrical tape, and then I waited out a dive to let it cure, and it was fine. The only downside was I had to breathe aqua seal fumes for the next couple of days. The next site we hit was Osborne Bank. This is similar to Farnsworth Bank. This is about 140 feet. It's a bunch of big boulder structure. It's really quite pretty. The viz here was pretty good down deep below. As you can see, there's purple hydrocoral, just like you see at Farnsworth Bank. This, to me, implies that there's a lot of current, since the hydrocoral prefer a high current environment. But thankfully, when we were there, the current was absolutely minimal. We ran a reel, and Dave, one of my dive buddies, decided to take some of the more difficult paths. I hoped to get him crawling through that same spot on the way back, but he decided to go up and over this time. This is a lingcod. Here you can see the chain going up. We were told on the boat that there were torpedo rays. And as you can tell from my enthusiasm, here was the first of the 2 torpedo rays that we saw on the very next dive. They were both male. This particular torpedo ray had a chunk of his disc taken out. Something must have bit him. I jokingly call these the honey badger of the underwater world because they don't care. If you're in their way, they'll swim right at you, as you can see him swimming at Dave and X here. I was thrilled to see torpedo rays. It's a rare opportunity for me. This is the second torpedo ray that we saw. It was right at the end of our dive, and unfortunately I missed an incredible event on camera. Someone actually landed on this torpedo ray. I had set my camera down to flash my light in his eyes to warn him that he was about to land on a torpedo ray, but it was to no avail. The torpedo ray actually swam through his legs and thankfully didn't shock him. It was a lucky break. The next site we hit was a tuna clipper wreck. We had originally thought this wreck was about 140 feet and therefore would be good for everybody on the boat, but when we got there and hit it with the sonar, it turned out to be 170 to 180 feet. We took a vote, and I didn't want to deprive others of the opportunity to dive, so we all elected to move on. But when they tried to pull the anchor, it was stuck. So Robin was sent down to move the anchor with a lift bag. And because we couldn't move, I was given the opportunity to dive the site, so I did. This right here is about 170 feet. I tried to stay a little more shallow. Dave, one of my two dive buddies, is rated to a deeper depth than I am and had a different diluent blend, so he was able to go down to about 180 feet. Xavier there in the background stayed much shallower. He was more in the 160, 155 range. Unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot to see above the wreck. The wreck is completely covered in nets. Thankfully, because of the way the nets lie, it doesn't appear that they're ghost fishing. It's not like they're sticking up like the nets were on the Infidel before the GUE guys cleared them off. These are laying over the wreck, enveloping the wreck. Here you can see Dave deeper than X, who's above him. And Dave got to check in all the little nooks and crannies. This is the final dive site. This is the wreck of the Midnight Hour. It's a 60-foot squid boat that capsized, and it's the exact same size and class, I understand, as the Infidel on the other side of the island. Here you can see the main reel with the main net that's still intact. Here's the radio that I found. I think this is the radio from the boat. I didn't take it with me. I put it back into the wheelhouse. Here's the bow of the boat and my dive buddy X. And I'm panning over to the wheelhouse. Here's a different perspective of the bow. Again, it's a tiny little wreck, 60 feet long. We lapped it probably 4 times. Here you can see the underside where the propellers are. The captain nailed the site. He draped the anchor chain over the wreck. Here's another perspective of the wheelhouse. You can see that it's set at a 90-degree angle. It's completely on its side. Because it's so small, there were quite a few divers on it. All in all, this was a fantastic trip. And I finally got to use my spa tub for something. I figured it would make a good tool for cleaning the salt out of my dive gear. I really hope we get to do it again soon. Great people, great dives, all in all a great time.